ध्ययेत् शारदचन्द्रसुन्दरमुखम् ताम्रारविन्देक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवराभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमात्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दरसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवद्याङ्गकम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणेश्वरं गुरुवरं योगासनध्यासितं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहमिति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वतामज्जतव पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। Namo Ramana. We will commence today's evening Atma Vichara by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham. As usual, I'll be reading from the book Ramana Answers Self-Enquiry 1900 to 1950, a compilation of all the answers on the subject matter of Atma Vichara by our founder, President Sri A.R. Natarajanji. In the series of questions that we have been blessed to ponder upon by Master, we have last week reached question number 58, and we are supposed to take up question number 59 today. But I will read 58 and then I will read 59 and we will meditate upon that, followed by which we will have a 20 minutes Atma Vichara session. Thereupon, Akka will be talking about Atma Vichara from Ganapati Muni's Ramana Gita. Question number 58. Devotee. Bhagavan has said that self-enquiry is simple, direct, and effective. Though I try to follow the same, I cannot say I have understood it. I put the question, who am I? But there is no proper response from within. However, I am getting a sort of stillness. To which Bhagavan had replied, how can you get the answer in words? It is not a regular mental inquiry to elicit a concrete answer. It is only a tool to direct the mind back to its source. To which now the questioner asks, yes, I follow, but the result is not clear to me. There is a short stillness which does not last. I repeat, yes, I follow, but the result is not clear to me. There is a short stillness which does not last. To which Bhagavan says, you should be steadfast in sadhana. By repeating the process, you fix attention on the ego, the I thought. Whenever the doubt arises, repeat the process and make the enquiry. Try to reach the source of the ego. Once you reach the source by one pointed effort, your peace will not be disturbed. I repeat Bhagavan's answer. You should be steadfast in sadhana. By repeating the process, you fix attention on the ego, the I thought. Whenever the doubt arises, repeat the process and make the enquiry. Try to reach the source of the ego. Once you reach the source by one pointed effort, your peace will not be disturbed. As usual, we have been so much trained to look for results. And therefore, on behalf of all of us, the devotee here is asking the two things that he is asking. One is that the result is not clear, that I am doing this vichara or I am doing, for that matter, any sadhana, the result is not very clear. And whenever I achieve that stillness, if at all, then it is very short lived. It doesn't last for a long time, which may be many of our experiences too. That the result is not clear, and that even if the result is clear that it is stillness, it is short lived, which does not last. I remember Venkateshji used to say that one of the Swamijis in Rishikesh used to mention that most of us are in spiritual tourism, that we want something, some experience, and we are not very keen about the final goal. We just are looking for some experiences. So often when we have any experience, we seem to become content with that, or we think that we get a sort of a high having achieved that result, and we feel that a sort of contentment. But whoever is very, very keen about the final result to be, as which Bhagavan says, is self-abidance. It is not, Bhagavan says, Atma samstiti eva swatma darshanam. The darshana of the self is only in its abidance. It is not in one experience, one short experience. It is to be in that state. That is what Bhagavan has repeatedly kept on saying to all of us. So it is important that when we come to this path of Atma Vichara, that we look for that samstiti, to be in the self, and not a specific experience, a short-lived experience. But the short-lived experience is not something then we poo-poo it off saying it is not important. It is important to get a grasp of what really we are looking for. It is important that it gives us a taste of that. But the goal of as a sadhaka is for us to, which Bhagavan has made it very clear, is to have that Atma Samstiti, to abide in that self as the self. So that is when we get little serious about our sadhana, that's when we ask that this short stillness is very short-lived, to which Bhagavan is very clearly saying, you should be steadfast in the sadhana. And we have been looking at practice and more practice. Bhagavan has been saying it. It is only by practice that those vasanas which take us away from this natural sahaja self-abidance, which is our nature. If we are the self, we are abiding as the self. wherever, but however, we don't experience that way. It is because of this vasanas which make us think otherwise, which make us look otherwise, which make us believe otherwise. Therefore, these vasanas have to be completely eradicated. And those vasanas don't get simply eradicated by any other intellectual understanding, because that again could become a vasana for us. That could, again could become a concept for us. Therefore, a steadfastness in the sadhana, that the sadhana the Guru has given to us to take that dive, that dip back into the self, which is here and now free of all vasanas, which is here and now already self abiding, because it is the self itself. By steadfast sadhana only we can we can make it ours. Basically what happens, we as and more and more we do the steadfast of the sadhana, more and more we do the sadhana, that we start to let go everything, because we see that everything else is only going to make us move in move away from the self. And therefore we understand that tyagena ekena amrutatvamanashu, we start to understand that. And therefore Bhagavan asks us to keep doing it, keep doing that sadhana. By repeating the process, he says that we should fix on the I thought and then make the inquiry on the source of the I, source of the ego. What is this that I call as I? By repeatedly doing it, we transcend all the vasanas and abide in the self. And by Bhagavan says, Maya, which cannot be easily transcended by any other effort, can be easily done only in Atmanishta. It can be easily done in the self-abidance. This is Bhagavan. Bhagavan gives this clue that the Maya cannot be simply transcended by any amount of understanding. It, because we are using the understanding, it's also part of that Maya. So we will not know that initially. By therefore abiding in the self, by abiding in the source of the ego, which is here and now, free of the ego also, which is also seeing ego as an object which rises and falls, which stays for some time and goes away and sees the play of the ego. That entity, that self, which is beyond the ego, that alone, because all the thoughts, everything is for this I, the individual. Only after the I rises, everything else rises. Therefore, the whole of this vasanas and all of that is only for the ego. But once we go to the source of the ego, two things happen, which Bhagavan says, the goal is to remain in the selves as the self-abidance, that happens. And we also transcend the vasana, which cannot be transcended by any other understanding. Therefore, this repeated Atma Vichara gets us the benefit of removing all the vasanas, and at the same time, it also makes us abide in the self here and now. So it is such a wonderful sadhana that Master has blessed us, that by doing this, we are going to more and more remain in the self. The Atma Vichara is the direct path by which both the vasanas are transcended and the self-abidance is also accomplished with every inquiry. Such is this, and therefore when we understand that such is the beauty of this Atma Vichara, then we give it one-pointed effort. We say that this is it. I don't have to go through any more spiritual tourism anymore. This is it. This one-pointed effort is enough, with which Bhagavan says, your peace will not be disturbed. This is Bhagavan's Vachana to us. He is telling by this, what happens is peace, which is our real nature, will not be disturbed because we totally become self oriented, self abided. We will not be interested in any other thing other than the Atmanishta. Such is this beautiful path of Atma Vichara that Bhagavan has blessed us with the immense grace of that Master, with which alone we could have come to this path, with which alone we could grasp his teaching. With his grace, for the next 20 minutes, let us do Atma Vichara. In Atma Vichara, however number of thoughts rises and whatever may be the quality of the thought, we inquire to whom is this and recognize it is for I. It is for the first person, first division that has happened. And thereupon we inquire who am I. And when we inquire who am I, when we keenly look at the source of the I or where from this I rises, then we are taken to the source of the ego, which is the self-abidance, which Bhagavan says, and with which the thought which has risen because of vasana is also transcended. And at the same time, we are actually going to abide in the self. We get the Atmanishta there. And with that, that is the Atma Darshana. That is the real Darshana of the self, says Bhagavan. And by repeated practice, Bhagavan assures that the mind will gain enough strength to remain at the source. With his immense grace, for the next 20 minutes, let us all do Atma Vichara.
One second.
Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya Namo Ramana. Over to Sharnaka.
Prostration is to Ramana, shining as the self in all beings. By the immense grace of that self manifest as Bhagavan Ramana, we are meditating upon Bhagavan's answers to questions regarding self-inquiry, and we are also having the practice session of the self-inquiry by that immense grace. And we are looking at Bhagavan's answers to questions in two contexts. One, a compilation made by Shriyar Nataraja of all the questions asked from 1900 to 1950 on the subject of self-inquiry. And we are also looking at Bhagavan's answers to questions which have been posed to him during the Virupaksha and Skandashram years specifically, and which have been compiled along with the answers which he has given to these questions by Ganapati Muni, compiled in Sanskrit as Ramana Gita. So the first chapter of the Ramana Gita, the questions that were posed to Bhagavan, the first of the questions was whether the Satya Asatya Viveka is capable of liberating from all bondage. Satya Satya Vivekena Muchyate Kevalena Kim. Or is there any other means for becoming free from all bondage? And Bhagavan has replied to that saying, Mochayet Sakalan Bandhan. The first, we looked also at the first verse of the first word of a work is very significant. The first word of the Ramana Gita was Maharshi. And if you look at the first word of the first answer in the Ramana Gita by Bhagavan, the word is Mochayet. It liberates. The total liberation is what Bhagavan is speaking to us about. Mochayet Sakalan Bandhan. See, if we want to be free from all bondages, says Bhagavan, is it okay if we are free from a few bonds and still have a few bonds? Of what use would it be if our if some of the bonds have gone and some of the bonds are still there? Because that would lead to the same situation. Whether it is one bondage or hundreds of bondages, they're all springing from one primary bondage, which is called the ego, which is called the identification, which is called the I am the body idea, the Granthi. There is one which is called the Chit Jada Granthi. But Sakalan Bandhan, why is it said Sakalan Bandhan? Because sometimes we may feel that we are free, but unless we are totally free from the attachment to the ego or the karma of the ego itself, the bondage may continue to exist in some subtle form for the time. So, Bhagavan is saying mojayet sakalan bandhan. But the guarantee is that if you want all your bonds to melt away or release from all bondage, what is the answer? Bhagavan says, Atmanishtaiva Kevalam. By steadily abiding in the self alone, can all bondage be destroyed. Then, what about the Satya Satya Viveka? Satya Satya Vivekam tu Prahur Vairagya Sadhanam. That is what is the position which Bhagavan is giving here to Satya Satya Viveka. He has given similarly the position to Soham Vichara in Ulladunapada. He says Sahayakari. It's a question. He says it is helpful. Paramarganasya. It is helpful. So Satya Satya Viveka, what does it do? It gives us Vairagya. Prahut Vairagya Sadhana. It helps to get Vairagya. And why is Vairagya necessary? Because if we are attached in some way or the other to the objects, then our love for the self will not be so powerful as to turn our attention within. So turn our attention forcefully within and make it stay there, abide there. Because Bhagavan says Atma Nishtha is what is required. One must be steadily abiding in the self. Therefore, if one is having some attachments, if one thinks that any aspect of the manifestation is real and thereby one is attached to it, then it is difficult to get back to the self. Whereas, if one recognizes that everything that is manifest is unreal, asatya because it is anitya, and asatya also because it is dependent, it is not niralamba, it is not nirashraya, it is not free, it is already bound. It is already bound. When there is an attachment to any object, there is a bondage over there. And therefore, one has to tell oneself, no, this is not the truth. It is only relative. It is dependent on some other reality. And what is this dependent reality? We know that the body is dependent on the mind for its existence, in the sense that unless we are aware of the existence of the body is as good as non-existent. In deep sleep, there is no body for us. So it is dependent on the waking knowledge. And the physical body is also dependent only on the waking state. It is not existing at all in the dream state. The dream body is also dependent on the dream awareness. If one is aware of a dream, then one is aware of one's dream body. If one is aware that one is awake, then one is aware of the waking body. So the body depends on the mind for its existence. It is not there when thought of it is not there. And what of the mind? Is it its own independent? Is it an independent entity, the mind? What is the mind? Bhagavan says the mind is only a series of thoughts. And which of these thoughts is independent? The thoughts are all dependent on the thinker, on the one who thinks. And it is because of our attention to an object that it manifests as a thought in our mind. If we do not pay attention to an object, it ceases to exist for that particular point of time. time in our mind as a thought. So only if we pay attention to something will it be a thought for us. The thoughts are all therefore dependent on the thinker. And is the thinker an independent entity? When we question thus, we realize that the thinker is also not independent. Who is a thinker? When one has thoughts, one may say, I am a thinker because I have thoughts. But if there are no thoughts, then can I be a thinker? I cannot be a thinker at that point of time. So my existence as a thinker is dependent on the presence of thoughts. But I exist even in the absence of thoughts. I exist in deep sleep. So this kind of viveka, this kind of discrimination, this kind of intellectual manana is called the Satya Viveka. And it can be, it's not a matter of a one-time Viveka also. It can be applied regularly and it may need to be applied regularly as well. Like, as and when the thought arises, one may tell oneself, if one is practicing Satya Viveka, this is merely a thought. A thought is arising, but this is a thought, and this thought is asatya. It is not reality at all, because it is going to pass, and it is dependent on my attention to it. Therefore, since it is a mere mirage, it is unreal, let me not waste my time on that which is unreal. So let me try to be with the self which is real. I may tell myself this. But what is the difference between that and self-inquiry? In self-inquiry, I do not create a thought to negate another thought. In Satya Viveka, we will be negating the asatya by a remembrance of that which is satya, that which is real. We will be remembering this is here, this is unreal, this is a dream, there is waking. But in self-inquiry, one does not create or allow any thought at all, says Bhagavan. Even in the practice of self-inquiry, one would not be saying something is unreal. Rather, one would be asking oneself, who is perceiving this? Who is perceiving something, whether it is real or unreal? Am I aware of the truth of the reality of the perceiver? Who is perceiving this? This becomes a prime question, and the non-reality even of the thinker is not gone into. One does not say to oneself that the thinker is asatya. Because if I have to tell myself that the thinker is asatya, who is going to say that? If I say Sharada is unreal, who is to say that Sharada is unreal other than Sharada herself? So, Bhagavan says, instead of Sharada declaring that Sharada is unreal, why don't you just ask yourself, who am I? If you do that, you are not saying whether Sharada is real, unreal. You are not going into that question at all. Rather, you are trying to experience the reality of your own nature, because that experience alone is going to free you, says Bhagavan. Mochayet sakalan bandhan atmanishtaiva kevalam. Atmanishtha. So one has to abide in the self. So one has to turn attention back to the self. And to turn attention back to the self, how does one turn attention back to the self? By trying to see what is the nature of the self. How does one try to see what is the nature of the self? By asking one the question, who am I? Asking oneself this question, who am I? We are trying to see who this I is. What is the reality? We are trying to see. So Bhagavan says in the next part of his answer, he says that the jnani na satyam chintaye vishwam. So the jnani kevalam atmani na satyam chintaye vishwam nava swasya anyatam sada tishtati gambhiro. So what is a jnani? What does a person of knowledge do? He is always abiding in the self. Sada tishtati gambhiro. Jnani kevalam atmani. The self alone. Apart from which there is nothing else. Kevalam atma. In that self which alone is, in which also ekana vadi needuri, Bhagavan says in Padikam to Arunachala, live forever alone, O Arunachala, as eka, as you alone. So here, kevalam atmani, jnani is ever abiding in that self, and na asatyam chintayet vishwam. He does not think of the world as unreal. Why says Bhagavan? Nava swasya tadanyatam. Swasya anyatam. He does not see it as apart from the self. There are no two, there is no duality at all to say that something is unreal and something is real. Only when we are viewing something from the perspective of duality, we can say something is real and something is unreal. If I see a world apart from myself, I can ask myself the question, is this world which I am seeing apart from myself real, or is it a dream? Only when there is duality. In Tripura Rahasyam, Parashurama is guided by Dattatreya to do Devi Upasana. Because he actually has interaction with a Jivan Mukta called Samavarta, and he recognizes the glory of that Jivan Mukta, but is not able to comprehend that state. Therefore, when he takes refuge in his Guru Dattatreya tells him, do Upasana, do meditation on Devi. And when he is doing Upasana, when he is doing practice, there comes a point when he suddenly feels, this Devi, whom I am worshipping, is she a creation of my mind? Is she independent of my mind? Or is she a creation of my own mind? This inquiry comes to him, and then he goes back to Dattatreya, who guides him then in the path of self-inquiry through the story of Chikidwaja, Hemachuda and Hemalekha. He guides Parashurama. But the point is that when he was doing Upasana, when he was seeing somebody as apart from him, then he could get the question. Because this Devi, is she apart, when she is apart from me, is she real or is she not real? Even the image of God whom I see, is it real or is it unreal? Then how do we ask about ourselves whether it is real or unreal? The ego I, because it is based on duality, we can question whether it is real or unreal. But how can one question anything about the self? which is all inclusive. So Bhagavan says that na asatyam chintayet vishwam. He cannot think of the world as unreal because he does not see it as apart from himself. Navasvasya tad anyatam. It is not apart. There is nothing apart from the self. It includes everything. Bhagavan, when he had the experience of the self as a boy of 16, when he conquered death, he says that I was that current which transcended and included the body. The body is also included in it. It was transcendent. It is transcendent. So, there is no thought of the unreality of the world. If we are to say the world is unreal, that means we are saying it only from the perspective of the ego, and therefore Bhagavan says any thought of the world, even a thought that negates the reality of the world, is still a thought. It is still rooted in duality, and one must transcend that. One must transcend even such discrimination and abide as a self in which there are no divisions. And when such abidance becomes steady, then that is the true liberation, says Bhagavan. So until there is any rise of duality in any form within us, we can understand that we are not yet fully established in the self. Therefore, we are all the time saying something is good, something is bad, something is real, something is unreal. It may help us to hold on to one thing to make Ekachintana, but ultimately that too has to get dissolved in the self. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana. Dilip?
Yes, receive the prayer, Akka.
Yes, please.
Apara Satchit Sukhavariraše Yasyormimatram Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gabhiram Chintavihinam Hridi Chintayami Chintavihinam Hridi Chintayami